October 26th, 1929. A cold wind from the East River cuts through the narrow streets of the Lower East Side, carrying with it the smell of coal and rotting vegetables from the market. Inside an establishment hidden behind the unassuming facade of a tobacco shop, the air is thick and warm. It is saturated with the aromas of cigar smoke, spilled whiskey, and heavy Italian cologne. Through the blue-gray haze, lamps in green glass shades cast a dim glow, throwing long shadows across the faces of the men gathered at round tables. Here, in this speakeasy, words are spoken softly, and glances say more than any shout. At a table in the farthest corner sits a man whose stillness commands more attention than the loud gestures of his companions. His name is Vito Genovese. He is only 31 years old, but his dark, deep-set eyes hold none of the carelessness of youth. A cold, calculating fire burns within them. He is short, stocky, and dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit that cannot conceal the power in his shoulders and arms. He listens in silence as his boss, Giuseppe "Joe the Boss" Masseria, pontificates loudly about territories and the profits from bootlegging. Masseria, corpulent and self-satisfied, waves a chubby hand adorned with a massive ring, taking a long swallow of the Scotch whiskey that Vito's men had delivered from the Canadian border just last night. Vito does not look at his boss. His gaze sweeps across the room, assessing every man present. He sees loyalty, fear, and most importantly, weakness. Beside him sits his longtime friend and compatriot, Charles "Lucky" Luciano. Luciano, unlike the old-fashioned Masseria, carries himself like a modern businessman. His movements are smooth, his gaze sharp. He catches Vito's fleeting nod, a nearly imperceptible motion that signifies everything is under control. They both understand that the era of the old world mustachioed gangsters like Masseria and his sworn enemy, Salvatore Maranzano, is coming to an end. The war between these two bosses, the Castellamarese War, is already staining the streets of New York with blood. But for the new generation, it is merely a stepping stone toward creating something larger, more efficient. This evening, the discussion turns to the longshoremen's unions. Maranzano's men are trying to seize control of the loading and unloading of ships in Brooklyn, pushing out Joe the Boss's crews. Masseria shouts, spittle flying from his lips, promising to drown the Sicilians in the river. Vito, however, does not see just a brawl over a pier. He sees a system. Control of the union means control over every crate that comes off a ship. It is not just about smuggling. It is the ability to halt shipments, to blackmail warehouse owners, to install your own men in key positions. It is a power far more durable than the profit from a few cases of illicit gin. When the meeting concludes and Masseria stumbles away, flanked by his bodyguards, Vito and Luciano remain at the table. "He is getting old and loud," Vito says quietly, not looking at his companion. His voice is low and gravelly, as if he is forcing the words through stone. Luciano nods slowly, lighting a cigarette. The smoke curls around his face. Old age makes men careless, and a loud noise attracts the wrong kind of attention. They understand each other without needing more words. The empire they are building cannot be sustained by brute force and endless wars for street credibility. It needs a foundation of fear, money, and political influence. It needs an organization, structured like a corporation, where everyone knows his place and his share. And in this new structure, there is no room for temperamental, short-sighted bosses who think in terms of a single street or a single neighborhood. Even then, Vito Genovese saw the entire city as his domain. He knew that for the wolf to rule the pack, the old alphas must die, and he was prepared to personally tear out their throats. He raises his glass, filled with dark Italian wine. "To the future," he says, and in the dim light, his eyes gleam with anticipation. A future he will build on the bones of his enemies and his masters. April 15th, 1931. Sunlight floods the boardwalk of Coney Island, but the salt-laced ocean breeze carries a chill. Inside the Nuova Villa Tamaro restaurant, time seems to have stopped. The smell of garlic, tomato sauce, and fried fish hangs in the air, mixing with the aroma of cheap wine. Joe the Boss. Masseria, leaning back in his chair, consumes a massive plate of spaghetti with clams with a contented grunt. Sauce stains his magnificent mustache and his pristine white shirt, but he does not care in the slightest. He feels like the master of the world, The Castellamarese War is nearing its end, and he is certain of his victory. Across from him sits Charles Luciano, calmly stirring the coffee in his cup. He is the only one who maintains his composure in the presence of the loud and vulgar boss. After their meal, they begin to play cards. Masseria slams his cards onto the table, laughing when he wins and cursing when he loses. Luciano plays in silence, his face an unreadable mask. At this very moment, Vito Genovese is several blocks away, inside a parked black Ford. He does not smoke, he does not speak. He simply sits behind the wheel and watches the clock. Each passing minute pulls his nerves taut like a wire. He does not doubt Luciano, but he hates to wait. He hates relying on the actions of others when he himself could do it faster and cleaner. Next to him on the seat lie 3 .38 caliber revolvers, wrapped in an oiled cloth. Inside the restaurant, Luciano throws his cards down. "Damn it, Joe, you beat me again," he says with a slight smile. He stands up from the table. "I need to use the washroom. Do not start without me." Masseria merely waves a dismissive hand, his eyes already fixed on his cards, anticipating the next hand. This is the signal. The moment they have been waiting for months. As soon as the washroom door closes behind Luciano, the front door of the restaurant bursts open. 4 men enter. They move quickly and silently, like shadows. They are Vito Genovese, Albert Anastasia, Joe Adonis, and Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. Their faces are hidden beneath the brims of their hats, but their movements carry a lethal confidence. The restaurant owner and a few patrons freeze in terror, turning into living statues. The air explodes in a deafening roar. Time, which had been crawling so slowly, compresses into a single, thunderous instant. The table where Masseria sat is overturned, cards and plates scattering across the floor. Joe the boss tries to stand, his eyes wide with astonishment and betrayal. He does not even have time to draw his own pistol. 6 .38 caliber bullets tear into his bulky body, ripping through his expensive suit and flesh. He collapses to the floor, his blood mixing with the spilled wine and tomato sauce. In his dead hand, he clutches the Queen of Spades. The 4 gunmen, without uttering a word, turn and vanish as quickly as they appeared. A minute later, Luciano emerges from the washroom. He looks with exaggerated horror at the body of his boss, at the panicking people. When the police arrive 10 minutes later, he calmly states that he saw nothing. He was in the restroom and heard only the crash. That evening, Vito Genovese did not celebrate. He simply cleaned his revolver, oiled it, and put it away. One piece had been removed from the board, but another king still remained, Salvatore Maranzano, who had declared himself the boss of all bosses. Vito knew that title was fleeting. In the new world they were building, there would be no kings. There would be a board of directors, a commission, and he, Vito, would take his place on it. He had passed his baptism by blood, and he liked the taste. September 10th, 1931. The afternoon sun casts long shadows over the office buildings of Midtown Manhattan. On the 9th floor of the Helmsley Building at 230 Park Avenue, Salvatore Maranzano sits behind a grand mahogany desk. His office is more like a throne room, meticulously decorated to evoke the power of a Roman emperor. Maranzano, a man steeped in the old world traditions of Sicily, sees himself as the new Caesar of the New York underworld. He has charts on the walls dividing the city's criminal enterprises into territories for his 5 newly sanctioned families. He has defeated Masseria and now believes he holds absolute power. He does not yet realize that his belief in titles and ceremonies is a fatal vulnerability. While Maranzano is explaining his vision to a subordinate, his office door opens. His bodyguard assumes it is another scheduled visitor. Instead, 4 men burst in, claiming to be Treasury agents conducting a raid. They are not federal agents. They are Jewish assassins hired by Meyer, Lansky, and Luciano, chosen because Maranzano's men would not recognize them. They quickly disarm the guards. At the same moment, in the hallway outside, another man waits with a briefcase. His name is Tommaso Lucchese, and he is there to identify the target. He points to Maranzano's door, then quickly walks away. The assassins storm the office. Maranzano, startled, rises from his chair. Before he can react, they are upon him. They stab him multiple times with knives before finishing the job with a volley of gunfire. The reign of the boss of all bosses lasts less than 6 months. The last of the old world mustache Pete's is dead, and the path is clear. In the aftermath, the commission is formed, a council of the heads of the major crime families, designed to mediate disputes and regulate organized crime across the country. Luciano is the de facto chairman, and Vito Genovese, as his underboss, is at the heart of this new power structure. The 1930s become their golden age. Vito is no longer just a street enforcer. He is a shrewd and ruthless businessman. His primary domain becomes Greenwich Village, but his influence spreads far beyond. He dives into the rackets with a methodical brilliance. He perfects the system of loan sharking, lending money at exorbitant interest rates to desperate businessmen and gamblers, then taking over their businesses when they inevitably fail to pay. His crews seize control of the Fulton fish market, dictating prices and skimming profits from every transaction. But his true genius lies in labor racketeering. He understands that controlling the unions is more profitable and less risky than selling illicit liquor. His enforcers, like the infamous Anthony Tony Bender Strollo, infiltrate unions representing garment workers, truck drivers, and dock workers. They control elections, embezzle from pension funds, and use the threat of strikes to extort money from legitimate companies. Vito's operation is a well-oiled machine of violence and corruption. He establishes a vast network of illegal gambling dens, craps games in the back rooms of social clubs, high-stakes card games in hotel suites, and a sprawling numbers racket that preys on the city's working poor. Every dime flows upward, through a complex hierarchy of soldiers and capos, until it reaches Vito. He becomes incredibly wealthy, but he never flaunts it. Unlike the flashy gangsters of the Prohibition era, Vito cultivates an image of quiet, menacing authority. He buys a modest home in New Jersey, drives an unassuming car, and speaks in low, deliberate tones. But his eyes miss nothing. He is a predator who understands the value of camouflage. His quiet demeanor makes the sudden flashes of his violent temper all the more terrifying. A subordinate who fails to meet his quota might find himself beaten with a lead pipe in a dark alley. A rival who encroaches on his territory might simply disappear, his body never to be found. Vito's reputation for brutality ensures unwavering loyalty born not of respect, but of pure, unadulterated fear. He is building an empire not just on money, but on the certainty that crossing Vito Genovese is a death sentence. 1937. The political winds in New York City have shifted. A relentless special prosecutor named Thomas E. Dewey has declared war on organized crime, and his primary target is Charles Lucky Luciano. Dewey's investigation into prostitution rackets culminates in Luciano's conviction and a sentence of 30 to 50 years in prison. With Luciano gone, Vito Genovese is the natural successor, the acting boss of the most powerful crime family in America. For a moment, he stands at the pinnacle of the underworld he helped create. But the same storm that swept Luciano away is now gathering force around him. Dewey's office begins to scrutinize a 1934 murder case, the killing of a small-time gambler named Ferdinand the Shadow Boccia. Witnesses, terrified for years, are now being pressured to talk. One of them, a low-level enforcer named Ernest the Hawk Rupolo, breaks under the pressure and names Vito Genovese as the man who ordered the hit. The indictment is swift. Vito, the master of staying in the shadows, suddenly finds his name plastered across the front pages of every newspaper in the city. He knows Dewey's reputation. The prosecutor does not bring a case unless he is certain he can win. Vito does not wait for the handcuffs. He makes a decision that will define the next chapter of his life. With an estimated $750,000 in cash stuffed into suitcases, he flees the United States. He travels to Italy, the homeland he left as a boy. He settles in the town of Nola, near Naples, a place where the name Genovese still commands respect, and American extradition laws are a tangled mess of bureaucracy. In Italy, Vito does not live the quiet life of a man in hiding. He uses his wealth and connections to ingratiate himself with the fascist regime of Benito Mussolini. He donates generously to the fascist party, befriends high-ranking officials, and even funds the construction of a new power plant in Nola, earning him one of Italy's highest civilian honors. He becomes a powerful black market operator, building a new empire supplying goods to the Italian army and skimming massive profits. He is living the life of a king, far from the reach of Thomas Dewey. He even finds time to order the murder of Carlo Tresca, an anti-fascist newspaper editor in New York, as a favor to Mussolini. The hit is carried out by a gunman from the old neighborhood, a clear message that Vito's reach is still long. Then, in 1943, the world turns upside down. Allied forces, led by the Americans, invade Italy. Mussolini's regime crumbles. In the chaos, Vito, ever the opportunist, switches his allegiance. He presents himself to the American military government as a staunch anti-fascist and a valuable local asset. With his knowledge of the local terrain and his command of the Italian language, he quickly becomes an indispensable interpreter and advisor to the Allied military government for occupied territories. He is put in charge of a vast supply depot, a position he uses to orchestrate one of the largest black market operations in wartime Italy, stealing trucks, gasoline, and food directly from the U.S. Army and selling them for a fortune. His new life of protected corruption comes to an abrupt end in the summer of 1944. A sharp-eyed agent in the Army's Criminal Investigation Division, Sergeant Orange C. Dickey, notices the vast discrepancies in supplies and begins to investigate. Despite threats and stonewalling from his superiors, many of whom are likely on Vito's payroll, Dickey uncovers the massive scale of the theft. He arrests Vito Genovese. The news creates a shockwave. The once feared New York mob boss is found working for, and simultaneously robbing, the U.S. Army. Shipped back to the United States in chains in 1945, Vito arrives to finally face the 1937 murder charge. He is confident, almost arrogant. After all, the case is nearly a decade old. Witnesses have a way of disappearing. June 11th, 1946. The air inside the Kings County Courthouse in Brooklyn is stale and heavy with the summer heat. Vito Genovese sits at the defendant's table, looking smaller and less imposing than the legend suggested. He is dressed in a simple, dark suit, his face a placid mask. He appears calm, almost bored, as the prosecutor lays out the state's case against him for the murder of Ferdinand Boccia. He occasionally whispers to his lawyer, his expression never changing. To the casual observer, he is just another man caught in the gears of the justice system. But in the shadows of the city's underworld, a silent, brutal campaign is already underway. The state's case hinges on the testimony of two key witnesses, Ernest Rupolo, the man whose confession led to Vito's indictment, and Peter Latempa, another mob associate who claimed to have been the getaway driver for the hitman. Without them, the district attorney has nothing but circumstantial evidence and old rumors. Vito knows this. He also knows that the wheels of justice can be stopped with the right application of fear. Weeks before the trial is set to begin, Peter Latempa is being held in protective custody in a Brooklyn jail cell. He is terrified, aware that his testimony will sign his own death warrant. He complains of a toothache, a nagging pain that seems to grow worse with each passing day. The jail guards, either through negligence or corruption, allow a package to be delivered to him. Inside is a bottle of pain medication. Latempa, desperate for relief, takes the pills. 2 days later, he is found dead in his cell. The coroner's report lists the cause of death as a heart attack, but the timing is too perfect. Word on the street is more direct. The pills were poison. The state's star witness has been silenced. Now, all eyes turn to Ernest Rupolo. He is the last remaining pillar of the prosecution's case. As he is brought into the courtroom to testify, a palpable tension fills the air. He looks gaunt and pale, his eyes darting nervously around the room, avoiding the steady, cold gaze of Vito Genovese. He takes the stand, swears the oath, and begins his testimony. But the man who once confidently named Vito as the architect of the murder is now a hesitant, confused figure. His story changes. He contradicts his previous statements. He claims he cannot remember crucial details. He fumbles with names and dates, his voice barely a whisper. The prosecutor, frustrated and growing desperate, tries to lead him back to his original grand jury testimony. But it is no use. Rupolo's memory has been wiped clean. What no one in the courtroom officially knows is that Rupolo's family has been visited. No overt threats were made, just quiet conversations with men in dark suits who spoke of the importance of family and the unpredictability of life. His associates have reminded him of the old code of omertà, the Sicilian law of silence. and the fatal consequences of breaking it. The fear in his eyes is not just for himself, but for his wife and children. The defense attorney tears his testimony to shreds on cross-examination, painting Rupolo as an unreliable career criminal trying to save his own skin by inventing stories. Without La Tempa to corroborate his account, and with Rupolo himself now a fumbling, contradictory mess, the case against Vito Genovese collapses like a house of cards. The judge, seeing no credible evidence, has no choice. He bangs his gavel, the sound echoing through the silent courtroom. Case dismissed. Vito Genovese stands up. He doesn't smile. He doesn't show any sign of triumph. He simply adjusts his suit jacket, nods once to his lawyer, and walks out of the courtroom a free man. He has stared into the heart of the American justice system and made it blink. He returns not as a fugitive, but as a ghost who has cheated the gallows. He is back in New York, and the family, which had been managed in his absence by Frank Costello, is about to feel the return of its true, dark heart. May 2nd, 1957. The lobby of 115 Central Park West is a study in quiet elegance. Marble floors gleam under the soft light of crystal chandeliers, and a uniformed doorman stands sentinel by the brass-framed entrance. Just after 11 o'clock at night, Frank Costello, the Prime Minister of the underworld, walks through the lobby toward the elevators. At 66 years old, he is the picture of a successful, semi-retired businessman. His silver hair is perfectly coiffed, and his tailored suit speaks of wealth and influence. For years, Costello has run the Luciano family, now the Costello family, with a preference for diplomacy and political connections over brute force, a style that has earned him immense respect, but also bred resentment among the old-school capos who miss the days of iron-fisted rule. As Costello steps into the lobby, another man follows him from the street. This man is large and powerfully built, his face obscured by the brim of his hat. He is Vincent the Chin Gigante, a former boxer and a fiercely loyal soldier of Vito Genovese. He moves with a predator's purpose, closing the distance to Costello. The doorman, momentarily distracted, does not notice him. Just as Costello reaches the elevator bank, Gigante raises a .38 caliber handgun. "This is for you, Frank," he calls out. Costello turns his head at the sound of his name. That simple, reflexive action saves his life. The bullet, intended for the back of his skull, grazes the side of his head, tearing a bloody furrow through his scalp and ear. The explosion of the gunshot shatters the lobby's serene atmosphere. Costello stumbles, his hand flying to his head, coming away slick with blood. Gigante, perhaps believing his target is mortally wounded, turns and flees into the night, disappearing before the doorman can even react. Frank Costello survives, but the message is as clear and devastating as a fatal shot. His reign is over. He understands the rules of the game. An attempt on a boss's life is not a negotiation. It is a declaration of succession. He knows it was Vito who sent the gunman. For a decade, Vito had been patiently biding his time, rebuilding his power base within the family, courting the violent street-level factions who felt that Costello was too soft, too focused on his legitimate businesses and political maneuvering. Vito saw Costello's finesse as weakness. Now, he has made his move. A few weeks later, a shaken Frank Costello formally relinquishes control of the family. He is allowed to retire to keep his lucrative gambling interests and legitimate businesses, a gesture of mercy that is more a calculated move by Vito to avoid an all-out war. The family is now his. He is at last the undisputed boss. The name on the door changes from Luciano to Costello, and now to Genovese. Vito immediately begins to consolidate his power, reshaping the family in his own ruthless image. He promotes loyalists like Gigante and Anthony Strollo. He tightens his grip on the labor unions, the waterfront, and the vast network of gambling and loan sharking operations. He rules with an iron fist and a paranoid suspicion of everyone around him. Unlike Costello, who enjoyed the limelight, Vito operates from the shadows, his presence felt more than seen. He holds court not in fancy restaurants, but in the back rooms of social clubs or from his Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey home. His ambition, however, extends beyond his own family. He believes the entire commission, the National Crime Syndicate, has grown soft under the influence of men like Costello and Albert Anastasia, the brutal head of the Mangano family. Vito wants to be more than a boss. He wants to be the most powerful mobster in America, the de facto boss of all bosses. He begins to forge alliances, plotting to remove his rivals. His next target is Anastasia, the Lord High Executioner himself. Vito forms a secret pact with Carlo Gambino, Anastasia's ambitious underboss. Together, they set a trap for the man who was once Vito's partner in the murder of Joe Masseria. The balance of power in New York is about to be shattered once again, and Vito Genovese is holding the hammer. October 25th, 1957. The barbershop on the lower level of the Park Sheraton Hotel in Manhattan is an oasis of masculine calm. The air smells of bay rum, talcum powder, and hot lather. The hiss of steam from the towel warmers provides a soothing counterpoint to the distant hum of 7th Avenue traffic. Albert Anastasia, the boss of what was once the Mangano family, sinks into barber chair number 4, a heavy man relaxing into a familiar ritual. At 55, he is still a fearsome figure with a bull neck and eyes that promise swift, merciless violence. He is the man who ran Murder, Incorporated, the mob's enforcement arm, a man personally responsible for dozens of deaths. In this moment, however, wrapped in a white smock with a hot towel over his face, he is just a customer. He is vulnerable. His bodyguard, a precaution Anastasia never neglects, decides to take a walk, perhaps to check on the car or simply to stretch his legs, leaving his boss unattended for a few critical minutes. The barber, Joseph Bocchino, works diligently, preparing his straight razor. 2 other barbers attend to their own customers. The manicurist at her small table buffs a client's nails. It is a scene of mundane, midday luxury. The tranquility is shattered when 2 men enter the barbershop. They are both tall, wearing dark overcoats and hats pulled low. Scarves cover the lower halves of their faces. They move with a fluid, unnatural speed. Before anyone can process their presence, they pull pistols from their coats. The barbers and customers freeze, their blood turning to ice. The 2 men stride directly to chair number 4. They open fire. The small enclosed space erupts in a cacophony of thunderous reports. The first bullets rip through the hot towel and into Anastasia's face and chest. He lurches upward with a roar of pain and rage, a wounded bull trying to rise. The white smock is instantly stained with crimson. He rips the towel from his face, his eyes wild with disbelief and fury. He pushes himself out of the chair, knocking over a tray of shaving supplies, and stumbles toward the 2 gunmen. But in his disoriented, dying state, he misjudges their position. He sees their reflections in the large mirror that lines the wall and lunges at the images, his powerful hands reaching for ghosts. The gunmen, unfazed, continue to fire. More bullets tear into Anastasia's back and side. He finally collapses to the checkered floor in a heap, his life bleeding out onto the cool linoleum. The entire attack lasts less than 30 seconds. The 2 assassins, their work done, turn and walk calmly out of the barbershop, melting back into the city's anonymous crowds. They are never identified. Inside, chaos reigns. The barbers and customers are screaming. Joseph Bocchino, the barber, is in shock, his hands trembling. The Lord High Executioner lies dead on the floor of a hotel barbershop. Miles away, Vito Genovese is having lunch with several of his capos, establishing an unbreakable alibi. When he is told the news, his face shows no surprise, only a grim satisfaction. The second king has been removed from the board. Carlo Gambino, Anastasia's underboss and Vito's co-conspirator, swiftly takes control of the now leaderless family, pledging his loyalty and support to Vito. With Costello retired and Anastasia dead, Vito Genovese stands alone at the apex of the New York underworld. He is the most feared and powerful boss in the nation. To formalize his new status, to lay down the law for his new era, he decides to call a grand summit, a meeting of all the major crime family bosses from across the United States. He chooses a remote, secluded location in upstate New York, at the home of a trusted mobster named Joseph Barbara. It is meant to be his coronation. Instead, it will be the beginning of his end. November 14th, 1957. The crisp autumn air over the rural town of Appalachian, New York, carries the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. On the sprawling 63-acre estate of Joseph "Joe the Barber" Barbara, a scene of immense power and prestige is unfolding. The long, winding driveway is lined with gleaming Cadillacs, Lincolns, and Imperials. their out-of-state license plates a testament to the geographic reach of the men gathered here. Smoke billows from a massive outdoor barbecue pit where whole sides of beef are roasting over charcoal. Inside Barbara's lavish home and spilling out onto the manicured lawns are nearly 100 of the most powerful criminals in the United States. This is Vito Genovese's coronation. He moves among the guests not as a host, but as a king receiving tribute. There is Carlo Gambino from New York, Santo Trafficante Jr. from Florida, Sam Giancana from Chicago, and dozens more, all bosses or high-ranking members of their respective families. They are here to acknowledge Vito's supremacy, to listen to his plans for the future of the National Crime Syndicate, and to settle disputes under his authoritative gaze. For Vito, this is the culmination of a lifetime of scheming, betrayal, and bloodshed. He has finally achieved the title that Maranzano so briefly and foolishly claimed, boss of all bosses. But miles away, in the sleepy town of Vestal, a different kind of calculation is taking place. Sergeant Edgar D. Croswell of the New York State Police, a man with 20 years of experience and an observant eye, has been watching the Barbara estate for days. He found the sudden influx of reservations at local motels suspicious. He took note when Barbara's son booked rooms for what he claimed were guests for a convention. Then came the call from a local butcher about a massive order for prime steaks delivered to the estate. Croswell, a humble state trooper, with no grand illusions about federal crime, simply knew that something was not right. He has a hunch, a policeman's intuition that a gathering of this size at this isolated location means trouble. He calls for backup. Along with his partner, Trooper Vincent Fascisco, and 2 agents from the Treasury Department who happen to be in the area tracking a local bootlegger, he formulates a simple, audacious plan. They drive to the base of the long road leading up to the Barbara estate and set up a roadblock. It is a quiet, almost anticlimactic action. A single police cruiser parked across the road. Inside the estate, the mood of celebration is shattered by a single panicked messenger. A car carrying one of the guests, sent out on an errand, was stopped and turned back by state troopers. The word spreads like wildfire through the gathering. Cops. A raid. The illusion of impenetrable secrecy is instantly destroyed. Panic erupts. These men, masters of violence and intimidation, rulers of urban empires, are reduced to cornered animals. Their carefully constructed world of power and fear dissolves in a chaotic scramble for escape. The scene descends into a humiliating farce. Men in $2,000 silk suits and hand-polished Italian leather shoes plunge into the dense, muddy woods surrounding the estate, desperately trying to evade the police cordon. They tear their expensive clothes on thorny bushes and trip over fallen logs. Sam Giancana, the fearsome boss of the Chicago outfit, is found hiding in a ditch. Others are caught trying to push their limousines out of muddy fields. Vito Genovese, the newly crowned king, is caught in the woods, his face scratched, his suit ruined, his dignity shredded. Sergeant Croswell and his small team round up more than 60 of the nation's top mobsters. They are taken to the local state police barracks, frisked, identified, and questioned. One by one, they all give the same rehearsed, ludicrous alibi. They had all, coincidentally, decided to drive hundreds or even thousands of miles on the same day to visit their dear friend Joe Barbara because they heard he was feeling ill.